Most people don't feel lost because they lack direction. They feel lost because something about their life doesn't feel real anymore. You can be moving forward and still feel slightly off, like you're watching yourself instead of actually being there. And the strange part is, nothing looks obviously wrong. You're working, you're improving, you're doing what you said you would do. But there's this quiet pressure behind everything. Like every decision is being observed, like every step is being measured. Now consider this. What if the problem isn't that you haven't figured out your path, but that you've been trying to perform it the entire time? Think about someone in New York spending 6 hours a day building something meaningful and still ending the day feeling empty. Not because the work failed, but because every action was filtered through an invisible audience. When that happens, your goals stop being something you move toward. They become something you have to justify. And once that shift happens, it's no longer about living your life. It's about maintaining an image of it. So what if the real shift isn't about pushing harder, but about removing the layer that's been watching you the whole time? There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep does not fix. It shows up in ordinary moments. You send a text and reread it 3 times. You open your laptop in Chicago or San Francisco, answer one email, and already feel behind. By noon, nothing catastrophic has happened, yet your mind feels like it has been sprinting for hours. A lot of people blame ambition for that feeling. They say, I care too much, I want too much, I'm pushing too hard. But that is not always the real problem. In the 2010s, researchers at the University of Michigan kept returning to one stubborn truth about rumination. When a mind circles around itself too much, stress rises and judgment gets worse. Not because the person is weak, but because attention gets eaten up from the inside.
This matters more than most people realize, because a life can look productive on the outside while being quietly drained on the inside. You are still showing up, you are still trying, you are still doing the things responsible people do. But in the background, another job has started running all day long, and that job is watching yourself. That is where the real cost begins. When you think about yourself all the time, you stop giving your full strength to the thing in front of you. Part of your mind is always turning back toward you. How am I doing? Did that sound right? Was that smart enough? Did they notice? Was that the wrong move? And because that conversation never fully stops, even simple decisions begin to feel heavier than they should. Think about how this looks in real life. A founder in San Francisco changes the product direction 4 times in 6 months. From the outside, it looks like flexibility. It even looks intelligent for a while. People in Silicon Valley praise speed, iteration, and constant adaptation. But sometimes the market is not the thing changing every week. Sometimes the person cannot sit still long enough to let one good idea survive the discomfort of uncertainty. That is a very different problem. A person applying for jobs in Austin sends out 200 applications. They tweak the resume every few days. They rewrite the cover letter again and again. They refresh LinkedIn before breakfast, check Gmail at 11:40 p.m., and feel a jolt of panic every time there is no reply. On paper, that looks like effort. In practice, it can turn into self-surveillance. And self-surveillance is expensive. It burns energy without creating the kind of movement that actually changes anything. The same thing happens in relationships. Someone waits 3 hours to answer a message because they want to seem calm. Then they overcorrect and send a paragraph at 1:12 a.m. because the silence became unbearable. The problem is not the text. The problem is the amount of emotional fuel being consumed around the text. A small moment becomes crowded. A normal pause starts feeling like a verdict. A simple conversation gets crushed under the weight of self-consciousness. This is why some people feel tired before the day has even really begun. Their body is doing one thing, but their attention is doing three. One part is working. One part is predicting. One part is judging the work while it is still happening. That split drains people faster than they expect. It is not just that overthinking feels bad, it also makes you clumsy in ways that are hard to catch at first. You reply too quickly when waiting would have helped. You apologize when nothing was wrong. You change plans before the plan had a fair chance. You say yes because you want relief, not because you truly mean yes. You avoid the call, the draft, the application, the conversation, not because you do not know what matters, but because you do not want to feel exposed while doing it. That is a painful place to live from, because it creates a strange illusion. It makes you believe the answer is more control, more checking, more fixing, more correcting, more thinking about how you are coming across. But the extra attention does not make your choices cleaner. It often makes them shakier. A lot of people never notice this because self-monitoring can wear a respectable disguise. It can look like discipline. It can look like self-improvement. It can look like being careful. It can even look like maturity. But there is a difference between paying attention to your life and standing over your own shoulder all day long. One helps you live better. The other makes living feel like an audition. And once life starts feeling like an audition, the wrong things begin to matter. You stop asking, what is the next honest step? You start asking, how does this make me look? You stop asking, is this true for me? You start asking, will this prove something? You stop asking, can I stay with this long enough to learn from it? You start asking, can I get certainty right now? That shift is small at first. Then it gets expensive. In Michigan, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in Austin, the city changes, but the feeling is the same. People wake up and carry an invisible audience with them, into meetings, into dating, into money decisions, into creative work, into healing, into the gym, into the quiet moments that were supposed to belong to no one but them. Then they wonder why peace feels far away. The answer is not that they need to care less about life. It is that they need to spend less of life watching themselves have it. There's a major difference between reflection and constant self-checking. Reflection helps you return to yourself. Constant self-checking pulls you away from yourself while making it seem like the opposite. That is why the hidden cost here is not only stress, it is distortion. You begin to distort timing because you cannot tolerate waiting. You begin to distort priorities because relief starts feeling more urgent than truth. You begin to distort relationships because reassurance becomes more important than real connection. And you begin to distort work because motion feels safer than stillness. So when a person says, I just need more clarity, that is not always true. Sometimes they do not need a better answer. They need less noise around the answer they already know. That is the part people miss. The deepest drain is not always the goal itself. It is the amount of attention you spend monitoring yourself in relation to the goal. Once that quiet drain starts running all day, the mind gets crowded, choices get rushed, and ordinary life begins to feel harder than it is.
And that is exactly why some people can be doing everything right on paper and still feel like they are slipping through their own hands.
A strange thing happens when people get scared. They start worshiping movement. More calls, more messages, more applications, more revisions, more checking, more doing. And for a little while, that can feel powerful. It can even feel responsible. In Austin, a person can send 200 job applications in 6 weeks and still go to bed feeling like they did not do enough. That feeling matters, because once action becomes emotional relief, it stops being honest action. It becomes a way to calm yourself down for 10 minutes at a time. Warren Buffett built one of the most famous investing records in the modern world, and from 1965 through 1990, he did not act like a man addicted to movement. He was known for waiting. He was known for passing on almost everything. He was known for doing very little compared with people who needed to look busy every day. That is hard for modern minds to accept, because we have been trained to believe that motion and progress are close relatives. They are not always even friends. Think about the person in Austin again. 200 applications sounds serious. It sounds disciplined. It sounds like hunger. But then you look closer. The resume changes every other day. The cover letter gets recycled. The same person checks Indeed at 7:10 a.m., LinkedIn at lunch, Gmail at 10:47 p.m., and calls that persistence. Then something shifts, not in motivation, in direction. The person cuts the number down from 200 to 15. Only 15. 15 companies. 15 real letters. 15 applications written for actual roles in Austin, Dallas, and Houston instead of anything with a salary attached. The reply rate changes, not by magic, by accuracy. Before, there was constant output and almost no contact. Now there are fewer moves, but more response. That can feel insulting to the anxious mind.
Because the anxious mind wants to believe that effort is measured by how tired you are. It is not. A person can spend 4 hours rewriting a message they should have sent in 20 minutes. A founder in San Francisco can change the product direction 4 times in 6 months and call it adaptation. A couple can have the same argument every Friday night for 3 months and call it working on it. Sometimes the problem is not laziness. Sometimes the problem is activity with the wrong source. The hands are moving, but fear is choosing the direction. That is why doing less can create more movement. Not because less is automatically wise, because less can force you to find out which actions were never helping in the first place. There is a painful difference between action that moves life forward and action that only makes uncertainty easier to bear. One changes your position. The other changes your mood for a moment. You can see this clearly in money, work, and love. In money, Buffett did not win by proving he could touch everything. He won by ignoring most things. That kind of restraint looks boring from the outside. From 1965 to 1990, boring made him extraordinary. In work, the Austin applicant did not improve by doubling the number again from 200 to 400. The real change came when each application had a name, a role, a company, and a reason. 15 honest attempts beat 200 nervous ones. In love, a person who sends 5 follow-up texts in one night may feel active. The person who says one true thing and then waits may look passive. But one is chasing relief, the other is standing on something real. This is where people get trapped. They assume that if stillness feels uncomfortable, stillness must be wrong. But discomfort is not a reliable judge. A quiet room can feel unbearable to a mind that has been using activity the way other people use painkillers. There are seasons when the bravest thing is not to do more by Friday.
It is to stop doing the things that only protect you from feeling exposed. That is a different kind of courage. It means sending one clean email instead of 10 nervous ones. It means applying to 15 places with care instead of 200 with panic. It means letting one decision breathe for 30 days instead of tearing it apart every 3. It means accepting that movement is not measured by how fast your calendar fills up. A lot of wasted energy hides behind respectable words: productive, dedicated, flexible, available, responsive. Sometimes those words describe strength. Sometimes they describe a person who cannot bear the silence between effort and result. And once you see that, a harder truth comes into view. Many of your actions may not be taking you toward what you want. They may be taking you away from the feeling of not knowing. That is not the same thing. So when life feels stuck, doing less is not always retreat. It can be correction. It can be the moment when scattered effort turns into directed effort. It can be the first time your choices stop answering fear and start answering reality. That is when fewer moves begin to carry more weight. That is when your life stops looking busy and starts becoming effective. And that is when motion finally becomes movement. There are moments when calm is honest, and there are moments when calm is only fear holding still. On the surface, those two can look almost identical. A woman in Austin waits 3 months to have the breakup conversation she already knows she needs to have, and she tells herself she's waiting for the right time. A founder in Seattle delays letting one employee go until the company has lost $120,000, and he tells himself he is trying to be thoughtful. Both people sound reasonable. Both can use good words. Both can say they are being patient, mature, and careful. But life keeps asking the same hard question. Is this peace, or is this postponement, wearing clean clothes? That is a painful question, because real clarity does not always feel peaceful at first.
A true decision can make your chest tighten. A necessary conversation can ruin your appetite for a day. In June, in Austin, that woman may sit on the edge of her bed at 11:40 p.m. and feel sick even opening her phone. The discomfort does not prove the decision is wrong. This is where a lot of people get confused. They assume that the calmer option must be the wiser option. They assume that if something feels gentle, it must be growth. But there are seasons when the softer road is only the slower form of damage. And there are seasons when the hard thing is the clean thing. Think about how different the outcomes become. In one relationship, 2 people keep saying, "Let's talk next weekend." Then next weekend becomes next month. By month 3, nothing explosive has happened, but the air in the apartment has changed. Dinner is quieter. Touch is thinner. Every small kindness feels formal. The delay starts doing its own kind of talking. The same thing happens at work. A manager in Chicago sees by Q2 that one role is not working. The numbers are already slipping. Deadlines are missed. Other people are covering the same gap every Friday. Still, the manager waits another 6 weeks because firing someone feels cruel on a Tuesday morning. That pause feels humane in the moment, but by the time the decision is finally made, the team is resentful, the budget is weaker, and the person who should have been released earlier has now spent even more time in the wrong place. That is not kindness. That is fear with good manners. A clear mind does not always move fast, but it does move. It may ask for one more day. It may ask for one more conversation. It may ask for one more honest look at the numbers, the messages, the silence, the facts you already have. Then it steps. Avoidance behaves differently. Avoidance keeps the meeting off the calendar.
Avoidance edits the text 12 times and still does not send it. Avoidance asks for one more sign in a situation that has already given 10. In Los Angeles, a founder can call that protecting team culture. In Brooklyn, a couple can call that not wanting drama. The words change, but the delay keeps doing the same thing. You can feel the difference if you listen closely enough. Clear decisions often come with grief. You may cry after them. You may shake after them. You may second-guess yourself for an hour. But somewhere underneath the pain, there is a strange drop in noise. The mind stops pacing. The body stops negotiating with reality. Avoidance feels better in the first 10 minutes. That is why people trust it. You skip the conversation, and your breathing gets easier. You keep the employee another month, and the guilt backs off for a weekend. You do not open the bank statement on Thursday, and Friday morning feels lighter for about 15 minutes. That relief is real. It is just expensive. A woman in Phoenix can stay in the wrong relationship for 8 more months because leaving feels brutal now. A small company in Denver can keep the wrong hire for 1 extra quarter because the founder does not want to be the bad guy. A man in Miami can keep saying he is thinking it through while his life quietly arranges itself around a decision he already made in private. These are not dramatic movie moments. They are ordinary forms of drift. And drift has a cost, even when nobody raises their voice. This is why stillness by itself is not proof of wisdom. Waiting by itself is not proof of trust. Feeling calm by itself is not proof that you are facing the truth. Sometimes the cleanest sign is much simpler than that. After the choice is made, does life become more honest, even if it becomes harder for a while? That is usually where the answer lives. A true decision may hurt your image. It may cost money. It may change how someone sees you by Friday. But it creates direction. Avoidance protects comfort for a day and steals direction for a month. So when you find yourself saying, "I'm just waiting until I feel completely ready," be careful. Read the room again. Look at the last 3 months, the last 6 missed deadlines, the last 7 unsent drafts, the last quiet dinner where both of you already knew. Peace does not always arrive before the truth. Sometimes it comes after you stop running from it. A painful thing happens to a lot of people in modern life. They achieve something real, and the relief barely lasts. The new salary comes in, the new city works out, the new apartment looks good in photos. Then, somewhere between Tuesday morning and Friday night, the old feeling returns. Still behind, still late, still not enough. That can feel deeply personal. It can feel like a flaw in your character, like something inside you is broken, needy, or impossible to satisfy. But in many cases, the feeling is not being produced by your private weakness. It is being fed all day long by the world around you. Instagram alone has more than 2 billion monthly users. That means billions of small comparisons moving past your eyes in a single week. A vacation in Tulum, a promotion in Manhattan, a wedding in Napa, a body transformation in Miami. None of those people know you. Yet by the time you put your phone down, your own life can start to feel strangely smaller. This is why the feeling of not enough is so hard to beat by willpower alone. You are not standing in a quiet room trying to build self-respect from scratch. You are standing in a crowded digital street where somebody is always richer, younger, calmer, fitter, more loved, more traveled, more healed, more disciplined, or more impressive than you are today. And when that stream never really stops, your mind stops asking, "What do I actually need?" It starts asking, "How am I doing compared with everybody else?" That is a very different way to live.
A person in Los Angeles can make $120,000 a year and still feel behind. Not because $120,000 is nothing, because in parts of Los Angeles, that number can sit next to $2 million homes, private schools, luxury gyms, and friend groups where success is always on display. The paycheck is real. The insecurity is real too. Princeton researchers published findings in 2010 that became famous for a reason. They found that emotional well-being rose with income up to around $75,000 a year, then leveled off for many people. The number itself has been debated and updated over time, but the deeper truth still lands. More money can solve many real problems. It does not automatically end the hunger to feel complete. This is where a lot of people get trapped. They keep treating the feeling like a personal failure, so they keep answering it with personal effort. More discipline, more self-improvement, more achievement, more optimization. A cleaner diet in January, a harder workout plan in March, a new job by September. And when the same ache comes back after each win, they blame themselves again. But pause there for a moment. If the same ache follows thousands of people across different cities, incomes, and lifestyles, maybe the problem is not simply that each person is individually ungrateful. Maybe the air itself is making gratitude harder to hold. Think about ordinary life in 2026. You can wake up in Dallas, check your phone at 6:40 a.m., and see 3 people announcing engagement photos before coffee. By lunch, somebody on TikTok has turned their morning routine into a performance. By 8 p.m., a creator in New York is teaching you how to become your highest self in 90 days. By midnight, your own quiet progress feels embarrassingly small. That feeling is not random. It grows in environments where value is constantly being displayed, ranked, and refreshed. You do not need a cruel family or a dramatic failure for it to appear.
You just need to live long enough inside spaces that keep reminding you that there is always another standard waiting right above the one you just reached. A woman in Brooklyn loses 18 pounds in 6 months and still feels dissatisfied, because now the question is not, did I change? Now the question is, why don't I look like the people I saved in that folder? A man in San Diego finally starts making good money, and within a year, he no longer feels proud. Now he feels pressure to buy the house, upgrade the car, and make sure nobody sees him as average. The target keeps moving. That is why the victory never fully lands. This is not just about social media, even though social media makes it louder. It is also in neighborhoods, offices, dating culture, family expectations, and friend groups. In Boston, achievement can become part of identity by the time someone is 22. In Silicon Valley, being early matters almost as much as being right. In West Hollywood, appearance can become its own form of status. Different places sell different dreams. The pressure underneath them feels remarkably similar. So the real trouble is not only that you want more. The real trouble is that you may be living inside a world where enough is bad for business. A person who feels content buys less, performs less, and panics less. A person who feels unfinished is easier to pull forward. That is why the message keeps changing, but the emotional result stays the same. You should improve. You should glow up. You should scale. You should heal faster. You should be more. That can make a normal life feel invisible. A steady marriage, a decent salary, a body that is mostly healthy. a friend who shows up, a quiet apartment in Philadelphia, a weekend without drama. None of those things are flashy. All of them are precious. But they are hard to honor when your attention has been trained to chase whatever sparkles harder. This is why the feeling does not end just because you win once.
If the environment keeps teaching you that worth is always somewhere else, then every achievement becomes temporary. It gives you a high, it does not give you rest. And once you see that, something inside the struggle begins to soften. Not because the world suddenly gets quieter, because you stop turning every restless feeling into proof that you are personally failing. Some of that pain was never just yours. Some of it was planted in you by a culture that keeps moving the finish line and calling that ambition. A lot of suffering comes from one habit people almost never question. They keep measuring a long process with a very short clock. Then they call the result failure. Bill Gates once said, "Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. That line stays with people because it names something painfully ordinary. You start too close to the story, and because you are too close, you misread it. A man goes to the gym for 3 weeks. He is in Dallas, waking up at 6 a.m., lifting 4 days a week, eating better than he did in March, and already checking the mirror like it owes him an answer. At day 21, he sees almost nothing. So he decides the effort is not working. A couple in Atlanta has one honest conversation after months of distance. It is awkward. There are tears, a little relief, and then 2 days later, the old tension comes back. Now they begin to think nothing changed. But one hard talk was never going to heal 6 silent months in 48 hours. This is where discouragement slips in. Not always because life is refusing you. Sometimes because you are reading a 6-month process through a 3-day emotion. That mistake shows up everywhere. A woman starts sleeping better in April. For the first 10 nights, it feels small. She still wakes up tired. She still gets anxious at 2 p.m. She still reaches for her phone too often. But by month 3, something quieter has changed. She is less reactive with her children. Her focus lasts longer at work. She does not fall apart every time the day bends the wrong way. None of that looked dramatic in week 2. It only became visible after enough ordinary days stacked on top of each other. That is how many meaningful changes happen. They do not arrive like fireworks. They arrive like accumulation. The problem is that the modern mind is not trained to respect accumulation. It is trained to look for signs right now, results right now, proof right now, relief right now. So a person can do something good for 14 days and ruin it by demanding the kind of evidence that only shows up after 4 months. Not because the path is wrong, because the impatience is louder than the progress. Think about how often people say, "I tried that." Sometimes that sentence means 3 weeks. Sometimes it means 12 days. Sometimes it means one uncomfortable conversation, one application round, one prayer, 1 month of discipline, and then a private verdict that says, "This must not be for me." That verdict is often too early, painfully early. A body does not trust you again in 1 week after years of stress. A marriage does not soften in 1 night after a year of small injuries. A career does not turn around in 30 days because you finally made one wiser decision in May. A calmer mind does not become obvious the first weekend you stop feeding it chaos. This matters because checking too soon creates a false story. It makes you think there is no movement when the movement is simply too young to be seen clearly. It makes you think you are stuck when you may actually be in the slow middle of something real.
And the slow middle is where many people quit. Not because they were wrong to begin, because the pace offended them. Bill Gates's line keeps coming back because it challenges that offense. 1 year feels long when you are tired. 10 years feels impossible when you are discouraged.
But human life keeps showing the same truth in different clothes. The most important changes often look small while they are happening. A person in Phoenix starts saving money and after 1 month sees almost nothing. After 1 year, they have a cushion. After 5 years, they have choices. At the beginning, the numbers feel insulting. Later, those same small deposits become freedom. A man in Seattle stops answering every text from anxiety. For the first 2 weeks, the silence feels brutal. By month 6, his relationships are cleaner because he is no longer using panic as a form of communication. Again, the early days look unimpressive. The later days tell the truth. This is why it is possible to be improving and still feel discouraged at the same time. Your feeling may be reporting the weight. It may not be reporting reality. That is a very important difference. Because once you understand that, you stop asking only, "Is this working yet?" You begin asking a better question. Have I given this enough honest time to reveal itself? That question changes the pressure. It softens the false emergency. It helps you stop turning every unfinished chapter into a final conclusion. So no, the problem is not always that nothing is working. Sometimes you are just checking at week 3 for something that only becomes visible at month 6. Sometimes you are judging a year by the mood of one afternoon. Sometimes you are standing inside a living process and demanding the kind of certainty that only hindsight can give. And when you stop doing that, something gentle begins to return. Not passivity, not fantasy, patience with reality. That patience does not make life shorter. It makes your reading of life truer. And sometimes that alone is enough to keep you from walking away from something that was quietly beginning to change. There is a quiet shift that happens when you stop trying to prove something. Not to the world, not to your family, not even to yourself. A man in New York used to check his email at 6:12 a.m. every morning, not because he needed to, but because silence felt like falling behind. And one day, he didn't. Nothing dramatic happened. No collapse, no missed opportunity. Just a small break in a habit that was never about work in the first place. When that pressure to prove begins to loosen, your actions start to change in a way that is hard to explain, but easy to feel. They become simpler, cleaner, less noisy. A woman in London used to rehearse every sentence before speaking in meetings. She would sit there at 10 a.m., rewriting her thoughts in her head, trying to sound sharp enough, careful enough, impressive enough. And most of the time, she said nothing. Then something shifted. She stopped trying to sound like the smartest person in the room. She said one clear sentence instead of 5 perfect ones. And strangely, people listened more. That is the difference. Not louder, more direct. When you are no longer performing for an invisible judge, your choices stop bending. You do not send the extra message just to feel safe. You do not accept the wrong invitation just to be seen as agreeable. You do not stay in conversations that drain you just to look patient. A man in Toronto leaves a dinner at 8:40 p.m. because he is tired, not because he has an excuse that sounds good. A woman in Sydney says, "I don't know yet," instead of pretending certainty at 3:15 in the afternoon meeting. These are small moments, but they are honest ones. And honesty has a strange side effect. it reduces friction. When you stop trying to manage how you appear, you start responding to what is actually in front of you. The work gets clearer. The conversations get shorter. The decisions take less energy because they are no longer carrying an extra weight. You are not trying to win an image. You are trying to do what fits. This also changes how you experience progress. When you are measuring every step, every day feels like a test.
Did it work? Is it enough? Am I there yet? But when that constant checking fades, something else begins to show itself. The slow build, the quiet consistency, the things that were already moving but too subtle to notice when you were staring at them every hour. A person in Chicago practices the same skill for 6 months. At week 2, it feels repetitive. At month 6, it feels natural. The ability did not appear suddenly. It revealed itself once there was enough distance to see it. The same thing happens inside you. Less self-interruption, more continuity, less doubt inserted into every action. And with that, life begins to feel different. Not lighter in the sense of easy, more accurate. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of compensate. You move because it makes sense, not because it proves something. That is a quieter kind of strength. It does not need witnesses. It does not rush to explain itself. It does not ask for permission after every step. A man in Berlin finishes his work at 5:30 p.m. and closes the laptop without checking it again at 11 p.m. A woman in Vancouver posts nothing for a week and does not feel like she disappeared. These are small freedoms, but they change the texture of a life. Because once you stop living as a performance, the space you were using to manage perception becomes available again. And in that space, something steadier grows. Not perfection, not constant confidence, just a clearer way of moving through your own days. And if you stay there long enough, the question itself starts to fade. Not, am I enough? Not, is this working? Just this. Is this true?